1968, New Delhi. While the British Army besieges the city, various rebel factions wage a fight to the death for control of the neighborhoods. India, the last jewel of the British Empire, is bathed in fire and blood. In the previous century, Gandhi, a young lawyer fighting for civil rights, was assassinated, lynched by an angry mob. Without him, India never gained its independence. The religious communities became more isolated than ever. Today, the situation is out of control. Hindus and Muslims are engaged in a ruthless fight while the impotent British Army watches. But none of this ever happened. In 1896, a small grain of sand saved Gandhi and allowed him to share his message of nonviolence. Our history is no more than a series of incredible events. Every one of us can influence its course. From the birth of a 1,000-year-old empire to the death of a flourishing civilization. From the creative genius of a handful of men to a worldwide cultural revolution. From the darkest of totalitarian visions to the most horrific of great wars. From the heroic resistance of an entire people to the iron determination of a minority. The most infinitesimal of our decisions can influence the future of humanity. To know the past is to foresee the future. May 26, 1893. Gandhi, a young lawyer, registered with the London Bar Association, is brutally kicked off a South African train. January 13, 1897, a group of angry protesters attack Gandhi and his family and threaten to hang him from a tree. March 1930, Gandhi begins a march across India. He is followed by tens of thousands of Indians. These three inextricably linked events are key moments in the life of Gandhi and the emancipation of the former British colony, India. India, 1858. Just 1 year ago, Indian soldiers from the British East India Company mutinied. The bloody rebellion spread quickly. The English response was ruthless. The last islands of resistance are now falling. To serve as an example, the leaders are executed by being shot out of a cannon. India is one of the oldest settlements in the world. From the west, the passage through the mountains has allowed many invaders to penetrate the valley of Indus, the river that India is named after. The history of the region includes a succession of empires like Ashoka's, as vast as the Roman Empire at its peak, or Gupta's, the true golden age of India. Still, up until the 17th century, none of these empires seemed able to completely control this immense and highly complex land. From the north to the south, there is not just one, but multiple Indias. It has an infinite variety of beliefs and religious practices. Simultaneously, Indian society has developed an unbalanced social system over the centuries that is based on castes. A strict separation of individuals into distinct groups that are ranked in hierarchical order. At the bottom of the social pyramid, in the lowest category for humans, are the untouchables, who are shunned by the rest of society. In the 16th century, when the Portuguese are already actively trading with the Indian subcontinent, the region is being run by a descendant of Genghis Khan, the Mughal Empire. At the beginning of the following century, the British are competing with the Portuguese. December 31st, 1600, in the city of London, entrepreneurs create the British East India Company. Not long afterwards, in the 18th century, the Mughal Empire, weakened by war, collapses and allows the company's influence to spread. In exchange for British protection, several Indian princes grant vast privileges. Trading intensifies. a steady stream of wealth flows between England and its Indian markets. Huge plantations produce large quantities of cotton, all of which is shipped to England by boat and then woven in vast factories. Soon, Indians can only find English clothing in their markets. Gradually, all trace of the traditional Indian economy disappears. 2 centuries later, the trading company is fully established, imposing heavy taxes and equipped with its own army. The company reigns over an immense merchant empire. But after the 1858 revolt, it is dissolved and India passes under the rule of the crown. Victoria, Queen of England, becomes Empress of India. This is the birth of the British Raj.
Welcome to the memory of humanity. Every historical event, regardless of how small, is recorded and connected. You only need to change one to upset all the others. Here, we are able to control time, analyze and compare billions of events in order to rewrite history in infinite ways. For example, let's go back to the middle of the 19th century, to the heart of the Victorian era. At the height of its empire, the United Kingdom is the world's leading power. The Union Jack waves its colors on every continent. However, not all the inhabitants of the empire are citizens or share equal status. The English are convinced that their society is superior to others. In India, they are perfectly comfortable with the caste system. The English simply place themselves above the others. In other colonies, like in South Africa, the condition of black people is particularly humiliating and degrading, and Asian people are practically slaves. The empire is based on extreme inequalities.
May 26, 1893, South Africa. This man, who was thrown from a train like a piece of filth for daring to sit in a first-class compartment, is deeply humiliated. What could he have possibly done wrong? This man is a gentleman attorney registered at the bar in London. Here, neither his diplomas nor his English education can balance the scales. In the eyes of the white colonialists, he is a coolie, a derogatory term denoting one of the too many Asian laborers. His name is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and this misadventure will change him forever. He will no longer tolerate this type of injustice. Arriving in South Africa for work, he will soon be confronted by the reality. His compatriots have been reduced to the condition of slaves. Thousands of them are working on huge plantations. In this English colony, thousands of white Europeans ruthlessly exploit the tens of thousands of Indians and millions of Africans without reservation. This brutal reality pushes the young lawyer off the sidelines. In 1893, he begins defending Indian workers who have been mistreated by their white employers. On March 22nd, he discovers that a bill designed to suppress Indian voter rights is being prepared. He immediately launches a huge campaign to protest this. For the British, the name Gandhi is becoming synonymous with agitator. December 19th, 1896. After a short stay in India, Gandhi returns to South Africa with his family. But when he arrives at the port of Durban, the authorities place the ship in quarantine for sanitary reasons. Curiously, the white Europeans are allowed to disembark. Certain rumors in town go so far as to say that Gandhi has deliberately brought a plague to South Africa. At the dock, a crowd of protesters scream insults and death threats at the Indian passengers. Gandhi understands that he, not the ship, is being quarantined. He finally obtains authorization to go ashore with his family, but only at night and with a police escort. Once he reaches the dock, the protesters come out of hiding and rush toward the little group. The situation quickly gets out of control. Then, the police chief's wife, passing by in a carriage on her way back from a dinner in town, rushes towards the scene and brandishes her umbrella, using it and her status to protect the poor Indian family. Escorted by the lady, to screams from the angry crowd demanding he be hanged, Gandhi and his family flee the scene.
We have arrived at a point of divergence. A point of divergence is a key moment, a crossroads in our history where our world can swing from one side to the other. Gandhi has just miraculously escaped a mob that was ready to lynch him. If the English lady had not intervened, the lawyer would have surely ended up at the end of a rope. At this time, his name and his actions were already well known in South Africa and in India. His violent death would have served as a warning to anyone contemplating taking up the torch of protest. In India, without Gandhi and his peaceful influence, it is probable that the tensions between Indians and British colonialists would have escalated into a spiral of violence.
During the night, August 5th, 1904, Gandhi cannot sleep. He cannot stop thinking about something that he read earlier that day. A brilliant book by John Ruskin. In this critique of the economic system, the British writer explains that the production of goods and wealth involves human beings, and that not everything should be sacrificed for financial interests. Those ideas are similar to ahimsa, a religious Hindu concept whereby life, present in all things, should be respected. Intense reflection pushes Gandhi to adopt new ideas and to put them into daily practice. His lifestyle is profoundly modified. Thinking that people often eat too much, while others do not have enough to eat, he decides to set an example and begins fasting regularly. He cuts his own hair and cleans his own toilet. For him, these are no longer menial tasks, and every human should take care of their own needs. Too often, the witness of violence against women, he associates sexuality with violence and takes a vow of chastity. Impressed by the British women's fight to obtain voting rights, he sets a new doctrine into motion based on civil disobedience and nonviolence. Satyagraha. Say no to injustice firmly, publicly and often illegally, but never violently, and accept the consequences of your actions. July 31st, 1907. When the government decrees that all Indians must be registered with the authorities and present proof of their identity at all times, Gandhi has a chance to test his method. Having become an influential leader, he suggests that the Indians in South Africa refuse to cooperate. This is followed by thousands of Indians being imprisoned, including Gandhi himself. August 16, 1908. In a public place and under the watchful eyes of the police, he goes even further and convinces thousands to burn their registration papers. Severely beaten, he ends up once again behind bars. The brutal British response causes Gandhi to write that he has discovered the source of evil: Western civilization and modernity. In 1913, he has part of the law revoked and decides to return to India the following year.
Force or violence? Gandhi endures beatings and humiliation without reacting. From his point of view, this is a show of self-control and therefore a moral strength. When Gandhi goes on a hunger strike, Indians see it as a proof of his determination. From the viewpoint of the English, it is a sign of weakness and cowardice. The British, after 2 centuries of occupying Indian soil, still don't understand how Indian society functions. They respond to the protests with demonstrations of strength. Winston Churchill goes so far as to label Gandhi a seditious and unclean fakir. 70 years later, in 1981, the British will handle hunger strikes in the same way, during the protests led by Irish Republicans. After 66 days without food, the activist Bobby Sands will die without succeeding in influencing the English government. Will Gandhi's non-violent actions be more successful?
January 9th, 1915. Gandhi arrives in Bombay. He is welcomed triumphantly by his compatriots. They are waiting for him to ascend to the head of the Indian Congress, the political party working towards independence. However, he has just returned from a 21-year stay in Africa. He doesn't really know his native country anymore. So, he sets out to travel across India and listen to its people. He learns that the situation is even worse than he thought. Misery is everywhere. The British have overtaken all the country's resources. Famines are frequent, and the population is crowded in slums. India, miserable, has lost its dignity. Gandhi decides to take action. He establishes an ashram, a sort of monastery where he trains his disciples in nonviolence. Followers call him Bapu, the Father, then Mahatma, or Great Soul. In the beginning, he doesn't know exactly how to proceed. March 30th, 1919, he obtains the first results by organizing a national strike. All of India responds to his call for a general strike. The country is completely paralyzed. This demonstration of strength lands him once again in prison. Protests in support of him begin soon after. April 13th, 1919, British General Dyer decides to teach the Indians, in his own words, a proper lesson. He orders his men to shoot straight into a peaceful and unarmed crowd without warning. Modern rapid-fire rifles against innocent men, women, and children. The carnage is horrifying. Gandhi, astounded, loses his last illusions about the legitimacy of the British government. His goal, which until that moment was to gain additional rights for Indians, becomes total independence. He rises to the head of Congress and quickly presents his program: boycott British schools, courts, and English products. Then, stop paying taxes and desert all police and army posts. Gandhi can count on over 300 million Indians. The British are less than 100,000. The only answer they are able to give is violence. The systematic repression is brutal. March 1930th. The British authorities learn that Gandhi has launched a 400-kilometer march across the country toward the sea. His objective is to circumvent the law requiring Indians to buy British salt by going to the beach and collecting it himself. It wouldn't have been so notable if he had been all alone, but Gandhi is accompanied by tens of thousands of Indians. A human wave submerges the British prohibitions. More than 60,000 people are arrested and thrown in overcrowded prisons. But that changes nothing. For Gandhi, this is only the beginning of a long period of resistance that will see him cross from one side of the country to the other, always peacefully, yet tirelessly rallying people to his cause. In 1942, in the middle of World War II, Gandhi reads his Quit India Declaration. Prime Minister Winston Churchill mercilessly crushes what he perceives as a sedition and has all the members of Congress arrested. More than 1,000 protesters are slaughtered. But in the aftermath of the war, Churchill's defeat in the elections allows the Working Party, long since supporters of India's independence, to take power. It seems that the time has come.
Living together. India is on the verge of obtaining its independence. But this emancipation comes with new challenges. Indian society is extremely complex. For example, the inequality of the caste system goes hand in hand with multiple religions, especially Hindu and Islam. But at that time, the two faiths are considered incompatible. Muslims, present mostly in the north, are unevenly spread out across the land and represent around 16% of the population, which is the largest minority in India. Tensions between the two communities are very strong. Gandhi makes great efforts to end the conflicts and keep his country united. British powers, aware of this split within Indian society, use it as leverage in the negotiations. If India gains its independence, it would divide the country. Divide and rule.
With Churchill on the sidelines, independence is within reach. But the fight is far from being over. One of the leaders of the independence movement, the Muslim Muhammad al-Jinnah, defends the idea of separating India into two countries, Pakistan for Muslims, the rest for Hindus. For Gandhi, this separation would be catastrophic and a terrible failure. Across the country, more and more riots break out. Hindus massacre Muslims. Muslims kill off Hindus. On each side, people are becoming more radical. Gandhi is increasingly isolated. Nehru, his political ally, does everything he can to preserve a unified India in spite of the two-faced Jinnah, who, while officially condemning the anti-Hindu protests, secretly encourages their outbreaks. The separation of India seems inevitable. August 15, 1947, after months of negotiations, independence is proclaimed to the cries, "Victory to Mahatma Gandhi." But the old man is not present. Disgusted, he could not share this jubilation. The day before, he saw his country rip itself in two, India on one side and Pakistan on the other. This results in huge population displacements. Leaving their homes, millions of Muslims make their way to the distant and all-new Pakistan and cross paths with Indian refugees heading in the opposite direction. Inevitably, clashes occur and escalate into massacres. Gandhi tirelessly crosses the countryside, desperately promoting nonviolence. He achieves miracles. During his trip, the troubles cease, but often start back up after he leaves. 1 year later, while on his way to morning prayers, Gandhi is shot 3 times by a young nationalist who believes the Mahatma is a traitor. Hindus and Muslims, after centuries of living together, are drawn into a spiral of conflicts and will become irreconcilable enemies. But that is another story.
Who truly was Gandhi? For some, he was the liberator of India, a hero in the fight against the imperialists. For others, he was a spiritual guide, sometimes compared to Jesus Christ. His fight for women and the untouchables made him a humanist. It is certain that radical Indian nationalists considered him a traitor. His indifference for the plight of the black South African populations has led some to call him a racist. But one thing is certain. He is one of the people who has left a considerable mark on the 20th century. Martin Luther King Jr. acknowledged being influenced by Gandhi's ideas. He too was cut down by the bullets of extremists, just like Jean Jaurès or Yitzhak Rabin. In the darkest hours of the fight for India's independence, when the country was on the brink of civil war, this man, dressed in simple cloth and standing all alone, was stronger than an army.